So our exam question is, can change, can progress, disruption, those might all mean different things to different people. Can it come from people who look after very, very large amounts of asset already? Or does it have to come from new businesses that don't have all that existing estate to worry about? To debate that, I'm joined by, this is a huge treat for us, to, first of all, people based in Edinburgh with Edinburgh-based businesses, or have been anyway, and it's really nice. You don't often get to do that, so that's a great thing. This is not an easy session to take part in, and it's not about what people's individual companies do particularly. I'm sure some of it will come into it, and anything goes and all that kind of stuff. But this is about trying to work out how does this industry move its way forward. I can't think of two better people than Jackie Leiper from Scottish Widows and Dave Ferguson from Seccl. If you could welcome them up, please. Thank you, thank you. Yes, go here. So what I thought we'd do, guys, is rather than just immediately get into chat, I wondered, it's almost like I've prepared this in advance. This is not a surprise, hopefully, to Dave and Jackie. Maybe you've got a couple of minutes to put things from your perspective, first of all. I thought of various ways of trying to decide who should go first. And so I've gone points difference, number of red cards, number of high tackles, and all that kind of stuff. But eventually I went alphabetically, and both on a forename and surname basis. Dave, I thought maybe you might
Happy to do that,
start us off.
Yeah, thanks, okay. When I saw and thank you for having us along.
That's all right.
When I saw the question, I was reminded of a perhaps slightly niche musical reference of an Alabama 3 song, actually, which includes the line, change must come through the barrel of a gun. And it's not quite like that here, obviously. But I suspect if Ian Taylor and Mike Howard hadn't come along in 1999, things would have carried on pretty much as they were, because it suited the incumbents. It suited them to remain that way. And I think innovation is ultimately a cultural issue, and it's also a leadership issue. And the reality is big organizations are heavily invested in minimizing risk, and I don't think truly disruptive ideas can really take hold in that environment. And big companies tend to be run very dominantly for shareholders rather than for customers. And we kind of know, I think, for all the progress that's occurred here, we know big companies can't do this because we're now in a position where I think our satisfaction with the platform market is lower than it's been at many points in the last 20 years, which is not a positive thing. And I think where disruptors wake up and go to work and care and trying to drive change and make it better, and incumbents tend to get up and try and piece together what can be quite broken business models. And I think it's interesting when you look at how the sector's developed, and I don't want to offend any of the sponsors, but I might by accident. But innovation is not a 19th century brand on top of FNZ and an inability to answer the telephone, right? That is not innovation, okay? And it doesn't become that if you've got a cool promotional video. Innovation is making things materially better on a continuous basis all the time. We have a sector today that is basically operating an 800% markup to FNZ's core costs, and that's what we're calling the platform sector. And I don't think that is innovation. I think it's kind of an accident of history we've got here, and I don't think it's the future. And I think an innovative culture, frankly, rewards customer and curious mindset, and it rewards agility and continuous deployment. You made the point there. I think I missed the Starlink session, unfortunately. In our business, I'm not here to talk about our business really, but we deploy 6 times a day now. We might have done 4,000 enhancements since certain companies started talking about the next big upgrade. 4,000 things have happened in that time, which is extraordinary difference. Doing the right thing when no one is watching, to me, that's innovation as well, and getting ahead of it rather than waiting for that gun to be shown. So I think interesting, though, big companies can be a catalyst for change. Just as I mentioned Ian earlier, he would have frequently referred to the fact that Standard Life was one of the great driving forces of Transact's early success because they made the concept of a wrap platform credible. And while Transact had been banging a solo drum in the early years, Standard Life came along and essentially gave it credence as a thing. And I think that's an interesting dimension to this. But it can also lead to this kind of stagnation I think we've got now. And obviously some big companies innovate massively. You look at a business like Vanguard, the biggest company anyone's ever touched any of our lives, I'm sure. It's still a very innovative organization. And I think it's, ultimately it's a leadership and a cultural thing really about how this works. And we talk about, risk management frameworks and client money and stuff. Ola's business, Fundament, was a great business. They use the same CAS auditor as Integrafin, right? They use BDO. We use Deloitte now. We've got the same standards on ISO 27001 for information security that these other companies will have. It's not a simple case of small companies don't do things properly and big companies do. And I think that's an important point we might want to bring out today. So I guess one last thought before handing over, if that's okay. And that's really actually Mike Barrett made the comment in his in your weekly update yesterday, this morning or yesterday, was it?
Today.
This morning, sorry. And about the last week's Dear CEO letter to the platforms. And I think when that landed on Friday, I think it was, I suspect all the disruptive firms were super, super excited, and none of the incumbent firms were. And I think that is a kind of symbol of what's going on here.
Okay. We said it was going to be one of the more challenging sessions of the day, so thanks, Dave. Jackie.
Well, what can I say? I don't recognise that description of an incumbent. That makes me sound like a sloth, I think, that I sort of come out of crawl out of bed, and instead I would describe that I bounce out of bed, and certainly being part of a big organisation, and have always been part of a big organisation, I think gives you the ability to invest in the business. You're not having to worry about running some of the other elements of the business and raising the capital for the business. That investment is there. You've got access to a lot of resources and expertise. And actually a lot of things that I think big businesses do take for granted: access to customers, distribution, brands, and all the rest of it, that allows you to really focus on how you're going to grow the business and do a great job for your customers. And certainly that's what excites me. When I get out of bed, I'm looking at how do we develop great propositions, how do we connect better across the wider propositions that we have available to us. So in my business, I've got the workplace business with 4 million customers. I've got the individual platform businesses, whether it's through the share dealing business, through the intermediary platform. I've got the annuities business, I've got the protection business. And actually, I think we bigger businesses could do a much better job of how we can actually bring some of those things together in an easier way for advisors. I agree, actually, though, that the disruptors do bring some real creativity and some real challenge. So if you go back and look at the sort of banking side, the Monzos of the world, when all that was happening, digital banks were set up and there was not such a thing as a branch, everyone was like, who can imagine having a bank that you don't ever visit a physical branch? And I think they were really transformational in pushing the big banks to really accelerate digitisation. And certainly being part of a big bank, we've got 21 million digitally active customers now. Now, that has gone, it's exponential, the growth in that, who now visit their online platform almost every single day, something like 24 visits a month. So when you think of the experience and expertise that a big business now has in the sort of consumer behaviour and I guess the way that they access and think about money, I think it gives you a whole different perspective on how you have to think about designing your platform business, your propositions, your communications, and so on. So I think you can take, some of the learnings from the smaller businesses, and in fact, big businesses like ours, I think have found a way of accessing some of that creativity either through acquisitions. I mean, this whole industry is awash with acquisitions. So we acquired the Embark business. We did that to bring in some of the tech capability and skills to give us a stand-up in the platform side, recognising that if we were building from scratch, we would take too long, we would be too slow for all the reasons that David eloquently covered. I'm not going to... Big organisations do have more governance. It comes with the territory. The FCA are onto you. I probably speak to the FCA virtually every week about things, right? That's just how it is. They take their lead from the big businesses. And I don't mind it. That can be beneficial. It can create influence. It can give opportunity. So I have to say, I think that is a way that big businesses are now recognising that they can access some creativity and really challenge themselves on how they can do things differently, whether it is buying in and taking a stake in a firm and partnering with someone, or whether it is actually acquiring a business. And I guess the good thing is, in my day-to-day business, I'm not thinking about how I can sell my business. I'm not trying to get value on it. from an IPO perspective, I'm trying to grow the business for the parent company. So.
Okay, really interesting. Thank you both very much for that. I mean, we're meant to be able to argue today and then go for a beer, right? I don't know if you guys are coming for a beer, but I'm going to make sure you have whatever beer means to you. I think we could do a spot of term definition here, right? Because we've done it a lot today. We've talked about change, progress, and innovation, disruption, and all these kind of things. And to me, when I think about something like disruption, I think about something that just drives a coach and horses through the whole industry, right? Just knocks it into a cocked hat and it gets forcibly remade in a completely different way. Maybe Transact did that, Dave?
Yes, I think that'd be fair, yeah.
Maybe that was the thing. I was trying to think what was the next version of that, and it's probably distributed ledger technology. That's something like that, maybe. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. You should feel free to counter that.
I think if you look at technology.
No, it's okay. You should feel. I am smart enough to know, Dave. That's what I was looking for there. But before you dive off, let's try and focus our thoughts through the firms that are in here and watching from home about what do you think useful change, useful progress, useful innovation or disruption means to firms that might be looking at this or watching it later or anything like that. Jackie, I'll maybe start with you.
So I think useful disruption, I think actually comes from other sectors. So I'm going to go back to the sort of digitization of things and, think of Apple and when Apple created the iPhone and the connectedness of Apple right across, all the devices that they've got, all the services, or whether you love or hate them, it's pretty slick, it's pretty cool. And I think that has driven real innovation into every single other sector, including financial services, including even the way that advisors will advise with their own clients. I think the way that people want to access and consume information now, we're kind of all of us are now dealing with our children, a generation that's coming through that behave in a completely different way to which we brought up and behave, right?
I'll say.
And actually, I think that's a real challenge for this industry. How do you attract the 20-year-old something into financial services to help you develop your tech, develop your engagement, develop your communications, the way that you think about the platform, the usability, what you think is easy to use? And we're having a bit of a debate, internally just now about this. If I was designing something, I think about it in little drop-downs in the way that I access digital tools. You go out and do some consumer testing and the 20-year-old are drawing bubbles that they're clicking on and they're thinking about how it would look on TikTok and whatever. I think that this is moving so exponentially. I think that the real challenge is coming at us faster than we are keeping up with.
So we heard that this morning, didn't we, that the change is moving faster than the humans?
Yeah.
Or the tech is moving faster.
And artificial intelligence for me is you talk about ledger. I think artificial intelligence will be the disruptor in every part of our business.
Okay, Dave, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think there's a big stepping stone, I think, here, which is about properly connected technology, which the guys earlier touched on. And, this sector today is not terribly well set up for that. We talk, whether it's a data model, whether it's the means of connectivity. I think you listen to, say, for example, Peter's example earlier, if you want to create a connection between Ningi and Seccl, for example, you can be in our sandbox in by 2:30, you can have it up connected by tonight, right? The documentation's all there, it's all present, it's set up that way. My money says if you go along to most of the incumbent platforms and try and build that connectivity, it ain't gonna be done by the time you go to bed tonight. And I think that's an innovation in itself, because this interconnectivity is a massive emerging theme and creates a lot of this efficiency and capacity for advice, which is not there today. And I think things like AI are obviously interesting, there's huge stuff to come there. But today, if I open an account on most advisor platforms and I pay money into it, I've got to wait a day or 2 or 3 days for the money to appear in my account, right? That causes queries, hassle, friction, dissatisfaction, okay? In the modern platforms, and I think I speak for Fundment, I certainly speak for Seccl, that money's in your bank account in 5 seconds from the minute you instruct the transaction. And I think, thankfully, through a connection we have with Lloyds Banking Group, in fact, so...
Everyone's friends.
Oh, it's good, sort of good for something, eh?
I like it when everyone likes each other.
Who I think is we talk in innovation, we talk a lot about big things, big step changes, right?
Yeah.
There are incremental changes can be made several times a day to make this better for people, right? And that is a cultural thing, it's an organizational design, it's a leadership thing. I personally as soon as an organization has a head of change, a director of change, I think you're doing it wrong, right? Because that should be embedded in the mindset of the organization. You shouldn't have to have a team that does change because that's what they're responsible for. It should be embedded in the product teams and how the company runs itself. And I think unless you're doing that, then you're certainly not going to get a job working for Starling, for example, I don't think. I'm pretty sure they don't operate that way. I think we've got a wave of companies coming through now, whether it's Anton's business at Wealth OS, Fundment, ourselves, whoever, who I think are set up to deliver this stuff at scale, not taking I'll speak for ourselves anyway, not taking shortcuts on governance or regulatory standards, that sort of stuff, doing it properly. And I think then it becomes interesting because you get, there have been step changes in technology infrastructure in the last 20 years. Right? So, our AWS bill is a fraction of a monolithic company putting its platform in AWS because our architecture is set up for that. We're probably 10% of the cost of a big organization doing that for the same weight of customer burden. So that can go straight to the bottom line, straight to the customer's benefit. That's not something you can just do by waking up tomorrow morning and fixing it. That's a long-term investment. Other stuff you can change. We can make a change today and say this is ready, this is live now. We got automated testing, it's out the door, and you can have it tomorrow. And that matters, I think.
Okay, so there's lots of cultural stuff inside here, and I want to unpack a little bit of that. And from some of the research calls that we do, we hear cries for stability and predictability more than we hear cries for things to change. And so the idea, I think, for some firms, where they are right now, of something that's constantly shifting in that way actually is pretty scary. It might be great, right, but it's pretty scary for them right now. And I wonder, does our sector, given I know we don't have fiduciary duty like they do in the States, but I think most firms in this room would consider they have a fiduciary duty for their clients, and that's why the sector is so powerful. Does it sort of resist disruption or some of the progress that you're talking about by its nature? It's naturally conservative. It made me think when it won't surprise you, even if you didn't see Jason, that he did the Zuckerberg quote about fail fast, fail often, break things, all that kind of stuff. But you can't really do that if you're about to get a £20 million CAS fine. That's not on. So you can't work in that way. So I don't know, what do you think, Dave?
Well,
Jackie, you start there.
I agree with that. You've got to do stuff carefully, but I don't think it means you can't do it quickly. I think the companies that have had £20 million CAS fines have been quite old traditional companies, actually, so I'm not sure they were moving very quickly. They may not be moving quickly enough. That might have been the problem. And I think I think it's a genuine issue that our historic industry has treated technology as an administration system rather than a customer-facing product, right? So it's a back office thing. No one needs to see it. If it doesn't work today, no one will actually notice. I'll be back there.
So let me pick you up on that, because I would shout out if I'm wrong, right? You can't do that at home, but I'm sure the Oracle might turn up in a little while. Who knows? Don't most firms here think of the personal relationship they have with the client as the product rather than a technological
Sorry, yes, a fair point, absolutely. But from a operational point of view in the life insurance and asset management industry, everything's priced daily. It's an overnight thing, daily process. It's not like I did that this minute, I want to see the money now. It doesn't work that way. If you go into Starling, if I give you 50 quid on my Monzo account, you can see it like that, and it's really there. It's not a pretend thing that's been put as a thing we're going to fix overnight. It's actually moved between our accounts, right? And I suspect I know most of the platforms in the UK are not operating in that way. They've got a kind of bunch of stuff going on every day to try and catch up.
I remember speaking, I shouldn't do anecdotes from me, but I'm going to do one. I remember speaking at a transfer agency conference once in Luxembourg. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever been asked to do. Well, no, it was among the most bizarre things I've ever been asked to do. I went in, full of piss and vinegar, trying to noise people up or whatever else. And somebody took me aside and told me why things are T+3 and T+4. I said, well, we should change that. I should do that there, and the obvious ways that you could make that happen immediately. And they were like, why would we do that? Have you any idea how big the systems are that do this stuff? Have you any idea how ingrained this is in a cross-border sense and all that kind of stuff? Get used to it, son. It's not going to change. And I came out of there pretty profoundly depressed, to be honest, because some of the enabling stuff you're talking about is a long way from being fixed. So the platforms can be as good as they like, actually, but you can't speed up a settlement cycle for a fund that trades T+3.
Understood. Yeah, of course.
Jackie.
Exactly, and I was going to build on your point about it being a relationship business. So I think fundamentally, the whether it's platforms, products, services that we're offering, predominantly to advisors. The advisor wants you to be executing things in the background, making it as easy as possible, making it cheap and efficient for these businesses, but more importantly, having access to someone that is going to step forward and hold your hand if something goes wrong or you need help, or in fact, actually help you develop your business. So certainly in our business, we still lead with relationships are primary. What are you trying to do with your business and how can we help? And what solutions have we got that can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve? And I think we've got to not lose sight of that. That's what we're here to do. And the tech needs to be really frictionless. It needs to be superb, but and we need to innovate and we need to be creative. And I think we are getting better in the bigger spaces at doing that for all the reasons I said earlier. But first and foremost, this is a people business, and we're here to help advisors help individuals plan better for the future.
Okay, we're just over halfway through our time. I'm hoping that there's even sitting behind what these guys do, there's a lot of lively stuff. I wonder, the Oracle, is there anything that you've noticed in the ether? Because I'm not privy to the Oracle's inner thoughts. I wonder if there's anything before I've got a list of questions like this, right? And I want to ask all of them, but other people might want other things.
Yes, I've got a question. It says, most advisors say they are wary of early stage disruptors because they're often not profitable and hence may not be a guaranteed safe home for client assets. How do you persuade them to make the leap?
Okay, that's interesting. We better start with you on that one, Dave, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you got to look at the backers, look at the people, look at what's going on in the organisation. There's been a very long history of very large, well-funded companies not making money at this for years. Most of the exits have been from larger organisations as well. So it's a real, FNZ posted its UK results yesterday, made zero profit last year, looking after £400 billion. It doesn't mean they're a bad business to support the sector, right? So there has to be a more informed, nuanced view. Lots of early stage companies, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure Fundment still loses money. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. It doesn't mean it's not a good business. Absolutely not. And there'll be loads of other examples like that. Transact lost money for a while, I think, in the early days. So did Nucleus, so did Eccentric, so did all the main provider-led platforms lost, I think, in aggregate about 10 times the capital sum. So you've got to look beyond the short-term numbers and back the people and the shareholders to support the business through that period.
Thanks, man, Jackie.
Well, 50% of the fintechs do fail, right? And actually, I think this is back to how do you, as a bigger firm, help take a stake in some of those firms, right? So I'm not advocating that we're trying to stamp out the fintechs, because I do think they bring disruption and creativity and actually skills into the industry that the big companies can then benefit from and pick up some of those people. But you can see why, there are going to be lots of firms, advisory firms and clients who would be nervous about going with a brand they've not heard of or a company they've not heard of, even with all the protection schemes that are in the UK for clients' money and assets.
And others that value it massively, I suppose. There's space for both, right? Yeah. And that was what Steve was saying with that.
It's also really quickly, I've been, doing this for 30 odd years, and I would say 95% of the insurance companies that were there have disappeared as well.
We've rebranded.
And no, well, most of them are in Phoenix, right? One way or another. And that's not worked out terribly well.
We beautifully and synergistically, in other words, ending in lay, got into one of the questions on my pad here, and this is the most important one because it's mine. And that's about firms buying in innovation. And in lots of other industries, as we all know, the cool kids with the full sleeve tattoos and the record bags build something cool. It's a little thing, probably. It's a piece of componentry. I remember once being at a pitch thing for someone, doesn't matter what it was, but some guy had come up with mapping for shopping centres, for malls. And nobody had done that before. And that you now see that in Sideways and those other things. He's probably a very wealthy guy now. He had no intention ever of bringing that to market or trying to get people to download a shopping centre map app or something like that. It was always built to sell. So we're very used to that in other industries. But the ideas for progress come from somebody's garage, but they end up inside iOS or Google or whatever, or Amazon or wherever it may be. And we're totally cool with that, right? That's just but this industry doesn't quite seem to work like that. Do you think, am I wrong? Is that actually what's happening here? Or is it the case that the dynamic is simply different in our particular part of the world? Jackie,
I'll start off. I think it varies. So in Scotland, actually, we've probably got the best track record of doing it. If I think about, Lloyds Banking Group as a UK firm, most of the stuff we do with fintechs and startups is in Scotland, actually partnered with Fintech Scotland. And I think Scotland actually is quite uniquely placed, actually, with the universities, both Edinburgh, Dundee, are very innovative and are bringing a lot of talent onto the market. So we do a bootcamp thing in Edinburgh where we bring in fintechs, almost like a sort of, they pitch, we take an investment, we use them though, and we'll actually effectively co-create byproducts, use them to help innovate and push us along from a sort of design perspective and thinking, and actually buy some of the products that they eventually build for us. We're also setting up a fintech school in Dundee, effectively for the platform actually. So this is us really trying to home grow some young talent that will come in and do a lot of the design and digital stuff. And actually that would never have been possible probably 10 years ago because I don't think we would have had those people coming onto the market out of colleges and universities, but also they would not have seen financial services as a cool place to go, to your point. But I think that is changing. Everyone uses money in some form, right? And therefore, actually, even the young kids are going, this could be so much better. So they've got a lot of ideas. They bring a lot of different thinking. So I think it varies, but I think it's got to be the way forward that you find a way that you can bring in and have ways that you're creating environments that creativity can thrive in a big organisation.
And as a follow-up, if I may, I think I've seen too often that when an exciting new business, maybe it's just a few people or something like that, gets bought by like a big bank or something like that, they get squished. The first thing they do is go to 400 risk meetings, and they don't know how to do that because they were never built for it. They were built to be in a garage coding or what. How do you deal with that?
We had a bit of an experience of that when we bought Embark. So it's 18 months since we did the acquisition, and actually the team that worked on the products and the platform development side, quite a small team, are really, really, really good, really innovative, really creative. And their initial experience, we were having to make sure that they weren't being swarmed all over by the risk people. I was going to say the wasps, that's how I like to think of them, but that would be very...
Strike that from the
exactly.
recording that's going on YouTube very shortly.
I love the risk people. And actually, what we've done is set it up so that it can run autonomously. So Embark is still running as a standalone business. It runs end to end, all parts of it reporting to me. And whilst I'm part of the bigger bank and I've got dual responsibilities and all the rest of it, and so does some of my team, I think that's allowed us to protect what we bought in the first place. So 18 months on, we're still running like that. And don't get me wrong, we reach into the bank and access some of the expertise. We're building some propositions for the bank. Embark built the ready-made investments proposition, which is a direct-to-consumer product for the bank. I mean, they did find that quite an interesting experience when they were sort of building into internet banking, But actually, it's not been all bad, So you can imagine they're sort of the architect of the platform that we had on the Embark side feels like he's just had the key to the crown jewels now that he's got, stuck into the sort of internet banking estate and what the possibilities are. So I do think you have to think about it carefully so it doesn't become squished. It would have been, if we had just piled it in and done what we'd done with previous acquisitions, we probably still wouldn't have the people in the business.
Dave, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it doesn't work so well in the sector because the sector architecture is wrong. So kind of to Pete's point earlier about the data piece. If you look at other industries, there's a kind of core series of operating systems, which might be iOS, it might be Android, whatever. They sit at the bottom, and then people build stuff on top of them, right? And then you can go further up and build more complexity into those apps as you go higher. Here we got a thing where if you take all the platforms that sit on FNZ, they're essentially apps on FNZ, right? And they might be, 15 or 20 of them in the UK, whatever they are. Now, at the moment, they all run in different versions, and that's a complexity in this. But ultimately, they are apps on top of the key infrastructure. And they don't have the same control, because the control is actually at the bottom level, right? And the thing that's wrong here, I think, and stops it from working, is the margin being collected by the app is something like 8 times greater than has been collected by the operating system. And if you re-engineer all that and you reimagine all that, you get a situation where there might be 4 or 5 operating systems at the bottom with a common data infrastructure, common data rules, all that sort of stuff, and then you can build kind of proper added value stuff on the top. Because what's unclear to me is present company excluded, I'm sure, what is the point of all these different companies sitting on top of the same operating system? Why is Aviva to Aberdeen to Quilter to Embark to whoever different? And why does that command so much of the client cost that's being borne here? And why does it sometimes sit in the way of innovation all the way through the core technology? I think it's a sector architecture problem, I think, and that's why you don't see that happening here. Whereas an example of Just Eat that was mentioned earlier, I think there are established protocols for how you connect into iOS and payment systems, whether you use Apple Pay, whether you use Stripe, whatever it is. These are well-established systems. In this sector, historically and to this day, the incumbent players want to put their arms around it and control it and say, we kind of control all this stuff. And actually, I'm not sure that's the way it should be designed.
Okay, that's really interesting. I will ask one more quick one, and then I'm going to noise all of you lot up. Dave, I guess this is probably for you first. I was looking at the data that Steve and Rich put up, and broadly speaking, what it shows is that the state, in terms of distribution, at least, not in terms of innovation and tech change, but in terms of the penetration of that into the market, is relatively steady. That is to say, we don't see net flows to the smaller, earlier stage companies accelerating like that. There are people doing great, and I'm sure some of your tenants are in there as well. But law of small numbers, right? Meanwhile, the very, very large platforms seem to be maintaining market share, not just in terms of AUA, which is very slow to shift for all the many bad reasons that we know, but their net flows actually are maintaining too. That is to say, in this market, they're declining at roughly the same rate as everybody else. Yep. It's a worsening picture for net flows, and I imagine many of you who are advisors in the room, you're the building blocks of all of that. But I'm not seeing data that suggests to me that from a distribution perspective, that cut through is there with firms going, do you know what, we reject the existing model that's there. Is this a matter of time to you? Does something else fundamental need to change for this to happen? What do you think?
Well, I think it's about, and certainly stuff I've got line of sight of in relating to our business is definitely a matter of time, because it's happening now. We can see it. We've got line of sight of the assets the next 2 or 3 years, there's no question. I see David Moffat up there, SS&C would be the same, growing very, very quickly. So while it might not be in that same data set, and there's also nuance as well between categorization of firms and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to change big time the next 2 or 3 years, big time. And we can see that. We can see the line of sight of it. I'm sure others can as well. So I don't think it's that this price point of 20 odd 30 basis points is just wrong now. The technology hasn't moved on to support that and substantiate that price point and make it super easy. There's been underinvestment, overtaking the profits out of the sector where they've existed, and it will change. There's a great demand for it. As far as I can see, advisor satisfaction with platforms is probably lower than it's been any time in the last 5 years.
I'm going to look round at Steve.
No,
advisor satisfaction with providers.
Yes, advisor satisfaction.
Declining? Steady? It's not improving, I don't think.
It's not improving, but it's not catastrophically declining.
Steve said very quietly, it's not catastrophically declining. For the tape. Jackie, what do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I think when you're in turbulent markets like we are at the moment, it's quite difficult to get clarity on where the new money is coming from, actually the new money into the sector overall, rather than just swashing about the sector.
Very, very little, I think.
I think there's there's very little, right? And maybe, we were seeing money move out of DB business, less of that happening for all the right reasons. But if I was to give an example, though, I think investment markets will obviously come back, net flows will increase and improve. And it is, I still think, going to be a scale game because of the price point. So, David's confident that the small platforms will be able to operate at the margins to support that, but it is going to be, the margin compression is there in the system to provide better outcomes to customers. And therefore, the only way to compete, therefore, is to be able to automate, have the efficiencies, but have the scale in your business. And certainly when we were moving into the platform market, we wouldn't have done it on its own. We're only doing it because we already have a workplace business on platform as well. and the share dealing business, that it is the waterfront of that makes it commercially viable and allows us to develop and innovate for customers.
But why are the new platforms lower cost then? Why is that?
Well,
You
is
know,
that,
P1,
are you going to,
Fundment,
can you stay at that though as you
SSC?
scale? I think that might be I think the scale, how scalable are some of these businesses, I think is the kind of $64 billion question.
Well, and I think there's a question of how scalable some of the bigger organizations are. And the fact that we've got to do a big upgrade every year or two, enormous expense undertaking in order to preserve stability is a non-trivial part of that. Yeah, I think that should be definitely considered.
Although I think, just in response to for a smaller platform, whilst you might have a new platform today, even some of the early platforms are now on creaking technology, so the vanguards of this industry are now, Hargreaves Lansdown, some of the other big firms are now having to look at how they innovate on their proprietary tech. I think it's a matter of time for everybody, right, to get to, all of the challenges that face the bigger firms are going to face the newer firms at some stage.
There is a cycle.
There's a cycle.
And it's very easy to say we won't be subject to the cycle because we'll have disrupted ourselves by that point. Of course, actually doing that when you've got the assets in there
it's
is
the same
hard.
cultural point. If you invest, 25% of your engineering resource every month in tech debt, then you won't get into that position. If you build it and let it run for years, then you'll be in that position, right? And I'm pretty sure the newer companies that are materially more tech savvy are not going to make not going to make quite the same mistake that's come along before.
Okay. We are at the end of our allotted time here, but I think we do have some time. I'm just going to see. We do have time for the Oracle. Oh my God. I didn't think there would be, but look, there it is.
Gift that keeps giving.
Oracle, welcome.
Hello, Mark.
Hi. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, thank you very much, although I have been offered to take over from Alexa after this event, so I'm considering it.
Does the ether have any questions for either Dave or indeed Jackie?
Yes, it starts with a comment and a question,
Oh
if
God,
you don't
really?
mind. Valerie says, I think the biggest disruption will be by those that can deliver efficiencies for advisors. What is the bigger issue? Having different tech for different purposes, such as platform, back office, cash flow, or having multiple platforms?
Crikey.
That was a lot, I apologize.
I can't even remember the start of that. I was blacked out. Jackie, did you do better than me and navigate through that?
Well, I think it will depend on the individual firm, actually. So I think firms will always want choice. They're not going to want to have all their eggs in one basket. So if you're only doing business that goes on platform, I suspect you're going to want multiple platforms. If you're a wealth business, though, that is offering support to customers across the waterfront, I suspect you'll want connected systems. The real thing is, how do you get something that's easy to use, that is low risk, that isn't generating issues for your business, that your employees can operate efficiently? And actually, how do you get leverage with the firm that you're using as your technology supplier, whoever that is?
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, if you look at the wealth management market rather than the IFA market, so the sort of, Brooks McDonald's of the world, these sort of people, and Brewin Dolphins and all that sort of lot, they will probably be on a single platform, or they wouldn't necessarily call it that, but it would be a system that ran all the books and records and reporting and stuff. And they're generally paying, internally, the cost of that system is probably 6 basis points, 5-6 basis points. At the moment, financial planners are operating at material competitive disadvantage because they're paying much more than that. And they're constrained in the execution because they've got to deal with all these different parties. And I just think that is actually just a break on efficiency, it's a break on clarity, it's a risk issue, and it's a real problem.
Okay, thank you. Any more for any more? Or
I've got a wee quick one
that'd be lovely.
from Scott. Has consolidation of the marketplace been a hindrance to the industry for innovation, in your opinion?
Ooh, who wants to go first? Jump in. I'm not even going to referee this one.
Ooh, has it been a hindrance? I think you've got to stand back and say, why is the market consolidating in the first place? So the consolidation, I think, is getting driven by the margin compression. In some cases, businesses like ours looking to acquire in capabilities and skills. Some consolidation happens to build scale. Some of it is actually to bring in capabilities and things that your business doesn't already have. And so I think that's been driven by a need to be more efficient, to move faster, And actually, I think it's probably a consequence of the need to get costs down, actually, and be more efficient.
Yeah, I think it's certainly slowed things down. I mean, I don't know, I have to be corrected, I don't think there's a single example of an M&A in the platform sector resulting in two businesses being fully integrated yet. Properly, operationally, on one system, every day.
Oh, we're just about there.
Yet, yeah.
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 I don't know about you, but I'm having a brilliant time, right? I'm really enjoying
No,
this.
but the point is, we're quite a number of years into consolidation, right?
Yeah.
And like, AXA and Elevate, and Wrap still two different things, as far as I understand it, in Aberdeen. You got the situation in other places where they haven't managed to do this, right? And obviously, while people are exercising their minds on that and spending all their money on that, they're not making the product better for customers. So that's I think it must have slowed things down, and maybe contributing to the, some of that lower satisfaction.
I'm going to have to come back on that.
I thought you might.
Actually, I think, can I say, I do think if you are going to acquire, you have to consolidate, and you have to put the time and effort into that. And at the same time, and some of my team are here, so they know this is the mantra. You can't stop innovating at the same time. And it is difficult, right? You've got to have a twin track and go, how are we going to get this integration done and do it quickly and safely? And how are we still going to make sure that we're delivering on the commitments we've made to existing customers? And that's certainly the approach we've taken. It's not easy, but that's how you've got to do it. But you have got to do the integration, because if you don't do it, and for all the people that are sitting on all different systems, that is what leads to some of the legacy issues, and they build up, and it becomes a much bigger problem later.
Okay. I've probably got time for one more little morsel. Oracle, I don't know if we have any.
A little one. Well, if no one is making any money, as David says, how will a lower price point be sustained? And who picks up the cost of their services provided by the incumbents, operations, support, etc.?
That's a very interesting question. It's
Addressed
to you, Dave. Let's go you first.
I think it's, unfortunately, the data is pretty indisputable. I think where money's being made, it's often being made in the wrong places, but put that to one side. We basically have a pretty ugly tech infrastructure and organizational infrastructure, and we can talk about risk management frameworks in big companies as much as you like, but I just can't be convinced that these companies are running efficiently as effective as they could be. And I think if you read across other industries, we haven't collectively implemented technology anywhere near as well here as it has happened in other sectors, and that's the big opportunity on the top side, I think. And I go back to the system that underpins the substantial majority of our platform market charges for its core service 2.8 basis points a year, right? That's in its accounts. You can go and read it, look it up, and yet the sector's charging 8 times that on average, 7-8 times that. You guys know better than I do, and I don't think that's a sustainable setup.
So a follow-up from me to you directly then. If this sector is that moribund, and you've been in it for a fair old while, so some of the moribundity you were a fellow traveller with back in the day, is there not a logical argument that says, plague on all your houses then, right? This will never make money. It's just a thing that has to exist and be loss-making on a ongoing basis. And and the follow-up to that is, therefore, do we not prefer, as we've heard from advisor firms a lot, I prefer the deep pockets kind of thing?
Yeah.
How do you argue back?
I think if you go to listen, Jonathan at Transact, he'll tell you. I always see him quoted. You can't run it for less than 13 basis points, right? Fair enough. I don't. He's running a great business. Well done, whatever. Does he have to make a 50% profit margin? Why is the platform sector unique in thinking it must make a 30, 40, 50% profit margin? Why is that? That's what every investor deck, every M&A deal you've seen, we're going to make 30, 40% margin. Why is that? Just because Hargreaves Lansdown did once, like 10 years ago. And that's become, everyone wants to invest in a business that's got recurring revenue, fixed cost base, it all goes to the bottom line. Why is the customer paying for that?
Okay.
I suppose where I come from is, I think the customer should be paying for the overall thing. It's not just the tech bit of it. It's back to this, what's the overall offering that you're giving that customer? So there was a sort of sweeping statement that everybody's losing money. Not everyone is losing money, but it's, are they making money in the right places? So actually on this one, I'm sort of violently agreeing. You should be making ultimately, what the customer is getting charged has got to be value for money for that customer at the very end, including all the advisor bits added on.
Okay, brilliant. Listen, and on that value for money question, which I believe there's some regulation that we are trying desperately not to talk about too much today, though Mike Barrett does have it on his T-shirt. I think we're going to stop there. I said at the start this wasn't going to be an easy session to participate in. These two have been absolutely amazing. You don't get ones like that very often. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Cheers, Jackie.
Well done.